Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin in the Yukon, where an Ibex Valley resident is speaking out about housing conditions in the area. He says some homes there are not fit to live in. Rafsan Farouk-Jugal reports.
Kurt Dorfling and his wife Holly moved to the Yukon last summer. They found a deal near the Old Alaska Highway in Ibex Valley. $400 a month for a cabin was just too good to pass up. They were in for a surprise when they moved in.
There was dead baby rotten chickens in the floor that were like rotting, and we had to scrape that up.
Dorfling says the cabin had no running water, proper insulation, functioning toilet access, or electricity. He provided CBC News with photos of the site. They show garbage strewn across the property and inside buildings. The couple say they cleared up the place at their own expense. Over the winter, Dorfling says he was about to go on social assistance. That didn't happen, but he says the landlord told him that he would increase his rent. That's despite a law that limits rent increases to 5% a year. The Yukon Residential Tenancies Office says tenants should get in touch if a landlord tries to increase rent by more than 5% or if a rental unit fails to meet minimum standards. They also urge tenants to reach out to the Human Rights Commission if they feel discriminated against based on social assistance.
Basically doubling our rent, going from 400 to 900, and you don't get a lot of money on social assistance, so he kind of just seen it as a way to make extra money, I guess.
The Dorflings did not have a written rental agreement. Michael Coleridge is the landlord.
If they're on welfare, they have to pay more because of all the problems they cause. And if you contact the welfare office, they're aware of that as well. I have nothing to hide, sir.
Coleridge says there are tenants on his property who can vouch for his character. The Dorflings moved out on Monday. They're now living in a trailer. Rafsan Farouk-Jugal, CBC News, Ibex Valley.
The federal government and the state of Alaska have signed a new agreement to protect Chinook salmon and help the species recover. The deal bans fishing of Chinook in the Yukon River and its Canadian tributaries for 7 years. Julian Gignac has more.
The goal is to get 71,000 fish into Canadian waters, and for years, of course, their numbers have plummeted. Just last year, in fact, there were only 15,000 that crossed into the Yukon. The fish, they're under immense pressure, this agreement says, from things like development and climate change. In fact, the agreement says that the run is depressed. That's verbatim. So how does this agreement propose to help the salmon to recover? Well, there's more than a few things. It proposes that Alaska reduce its bycatch. It also calls for more research into in-river mortality, as well as restoring habitat along the river. The agreement also says there could be limited harvest for ceremonial purposes, but that all depends on the strength of the run, and specifically if 71,000 fish or more enter into the Yukon. Now, for years, Yukon First Nations have abstained from harvesting any salmon to give the species a fighting chance to recover. What remains unclear is how this new agreement will square with the final agreements held by Yukon First Nations. Julian Gignac, CBC News, Whitehorse.
The RCMP is concerned with the Northwest Territories' draft missing persons legislation. That's what officers told the NWT's Social Development Committee today. Police say clauses meant to protect people fleeing domestic abuse are redundant and might hurt missing persons investigations. The clauses say judges need to consider evidence that someone is fleeing abuse before giving police permission to access private records.
You could have a justice that may say, well, I believe this person could be fleeing a domestic situation, so I'm not going to issue that authorization. But from a policing standpoint, it's irrelevant because we need to find that person. We have no other choice because we're legally bound to do so.
The draft Missing Persons Act is under review by MLAs and the Social Development Committee. Next week, they're holding public feedback meetings in Aklavik and Inuvik. Goodlook Energy Corporation customers can expect to pay more on their monthly power bills starting this month. The minister responsible for QEC has applied to add a fuel rider of almost 4 cents per kilowatt hour. Minister John Main says the rider is because of the increase to Nunavut fuel prices announced in January. Customers who use about 500 kilowatt hours per month will see their bills jump by more than $19, except for public housing tenants who have their bills subsidized by the Housing Corporation. Nunavut's most southern community will no longer have a flight to Iqaluit, its only direct route to the rest of the territory. Arctic Fresh has provided flights since 2021. They were subsidized by the government of Nunavut until last year. Since then, it continued to fly once a week, but the company says it was losing too much money. Ryan Hagen is a director for Arctic Fresh Group. He says the airline reached out to the GN for support, but didn't get a response. They say they are still hoping to negotiate.
Just for the GN to come back to the table and look to support financially. I think if the GN had gone and utilized our flight for a lot more of their duty travel or medical travel, I think that would have substantially supported the flight.
A round-trip ticket for the 2-hour and 30-minute flight to Iqaluit used to cost about $2,400. Sanikiluaq is the only community in Nunavut that does not have a direct, regular commercial flight within the territory. April showers took a backseat to heavy snow and strong winds today in parts of Ontario and Quebec, and power outages were widespread. The CBC's Sarah Levitt has that story.
It may officially be spring, but winter is having the last laugh. Snow has been walloping southern Quebec and parts of Ontario since early Thursday morning, and it's moving eastward. Wet, heavy, and unforgiving.
I felt pretty depressed, honestly. Yesterday there was flowers, and today it's under a foot of snow. So
I had to go back into my closet and fish out all my stuff. I almost wore my spring coat, and I'm glad I didn't.
Up to 25 centimeters of snow is expected to fall in parts of southern Quebec and New Brunswick, with wind gusts up to 70 kilometers per hour. Hundreds of schools closed due to the conditions, the dense snow clinging to trees and power lines. By noon, 250,000 households were without power in Quebec.
The snow is essentially 3 to 6 times more heavy than usually it would be. So it has an impact on trees, of course. Branches have broken or falling on our network, causing outages.
In Montreal and Ottawa, another concern.
I wish I didn't change my winter tires on Sunday. That was definitely a mistake.
Road conditions slushy and slippy.
Everyone will have to be patient because we will need 8 to 12 hours to come back doing the turn around the network. We have to plow the snow away from 10,000 kilometers, 6,000 kilometers of sidewalks and 4,000 kilometers of streets.
After a particularly mild winter, this storm feels unexpected, but
in the first half of April, don't be surprised. It doesn't happen every year. In the second half of April, it's more exceptional. And at the beginning of May, it's like near records, or like it's really extreme.
Some people took advantage of the snowfall.
C'est vraiment beau, c'est malade.
This skier says the conditions are sick. As the storm heads east, New Brunswick and Cape Breton should see heavier snowfall into Friday, but there is a silver lining. The white stuff isn't expected to stay on the ground long. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Montreal.
This week, we've been sharing moments from Nunavut's history as it turns 25. For that coverage, I spoke with Tagak Curley. He's a founding father of Nunavut, a longtime politician, and now an elder. I asked him what message he has for the territory's youth who will one day lead Nunavut. Here's what he said.
It's very important that the younger generation must make sure the parents, those that are listening, make sure they are educated. We have no choice. We have to go through the school system, support the children, and go to school and get educated locally and then beyond. Go to university, get higher degrees, and get your career path going. because it's not going to get any easier to find jobs in the future. All over the world, jobs are very precious, even so more so in Nunavut. So we need the younger generation to be educated and get involved. We need to be educated and they have to work hard to achieve it. We will not get there without working hard and going to school even at the challenging times.
That was Tagak Curley sharing his message for the youth who will one day usher Nunavut through its next 25 years.
Mukshak palilaw ta awla jina lakpo kugyang mullo amalo kok biu yamun tinga liwaling mullo pangolo asyang miu muna toy muina daile tak pangwa kimukshak palilaw sumo mutay ma buat taling ni pilada yulak sumo inuit amichwalu walang muta.
Priya doesn't love exercising, but loves the way it makes her feel. Max doesn't love cooking, but loves homemade meals with his kids. Paul doesn't love doing his taxes, but loves getting the benefits and credits he qualified for. Learn more about benefits and credits like the GST HST credit and Canada Workers Benefit at canada.ca/every dollar counts. A message from the Government of Canada.
What does it take to reach the top? Join me, Ian Hannamansing, as I get to know some truly inspirational people who share the secrets of their success.
If you want to talk about one moment, it's a moment where I would live or die.
It changed everything on CBC News Explore.
Moments that are so on trend right now. Ticket pricing, artificial intelligence, being a Swiftie, wild fashion trends, showbiz, and cancel culture. Join me, Alameen Abdul Mahmood, for Commotion, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Sipping on a bit of Henny, can I get a little Remy? Feeling heavy, chilling but I'm feeling ready. Pulled up in a big old Chevy.
Collars are one way of tracking caribou populations in the NWT. The process involves firing a net from a helicopter to capture the animal, then strapping a tracking device on a band around its neck. It's quick, but it is stressful. So a team in the Sawtooth region have been trying out a less invasive method, searching from the skies, not for the caribou themselves, but for what they leave behind. The Sawtooth Renewable Resources Council has been studying northern mountain caribou poop for more than a decade. Manisha Singh and Leon Andrew are both involved in the project. The CBC's Leanie Lambrink spoke to them last week.
You went up on one of those aerial surveys recently, Manisha. I wonder if you can just walk us through what a day of field work, what that day of field work was like.
Sure, yeah. So this was my first time going out in the field, and of course it was an amazing experience going out with Leon, with other guardians and the ECCC scientist. What we do is we follow the trails of caribou, and we look for what is called like a cratering site. So basically, in winter, caribou would dig up snow to look for lichen or dwarf willow and birch. I think they also feed on it, Leon, if I'm right. So they look for that and they dig up the sites, and it's like a huge cratering site, which you can spot from up in the air. We land in that location and we basically go in different direction and gather fecal sample. We look for pucks together, pucks of fecal sample, which is like pellets on one spot, like it's a huge chunk of pellets on one spot, and we use like a wooden stick to like collect it in a sample bag. We label it, bring it back, and yeah, that's what a typical day looks like. It's just collecting as many samples as we can. We usually try and aim to collect as far as like 30 to 50 sample per site, and these samples then come back and get analyzed. We swish it, we call it swishing. We prepare the sample, and that sample is sent out to Trent University lab for getting further analyzed and for the data to be extracted out of it.
I know that you are still gathering the data and working with it and working on those results, but I wonder what can be learned from looking at poop?
What we're hoping to shed some light on is there a different type of caribou in Mackenzie Mountain? Or we thought there were, so that's where we're at. So we can learn from the fecal sample if there's a number of different herd and different type of caribou. So that's the reason we're doing this, plus other things. And my colleague here can answer to if you want.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that. What we're trying to learn from this project is seeing the movement of caribou and the connectivity across Mackenzie Mountain area, across Satu, across Northwest Territory. Yeah, so once we develop the maps or like data has been analyzed, we could develop maps to showcase the movement, how far the northern mountain caribou are moving around and how they're connected to each other.
Leon, I know one of the arguments against using collars to track and learn about caribou is that process is stressful for animals. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about why that's an issue.
Here in the Satu, the group have talked about that a lot. They're saying that, collaring caribou is not good for the caribou, according to the elders. And the other part to the collaring, they do that in March. And at the time they do that, where there's still, caribou are still got those little fetus in their stomach, the little ones in the stomach that would netting them from the helicopter, and that would really endanger the cow and the calf, let's put it that way, as they trip and fall in the snow. So that's what the elders really dislike. And so if the caribou, the female happened to be the one that get captured, it could be destroyed, and you destroy 2 caribou at once. So that's the things that really bother our elders, including me.
Is there anything else that you want people to know about this work that you guys are doing?
I would just say that it's an amazing example of how traditional knowledge and Western science could work together to build such a crucial information. Once we present, it's up to the community to interpret the data too, because I think the community has so much information around movement of caribou and how climate change is impacting that. So it would be nice to hear from the community, from the elders and the youth who go out on the land so much, would be able to talk more about why we're seeing whatever the result we're going to present to the community. So it would be nice to showcase that, and it would be nice to showcase how Western science and traditional knowledge could work together to answer important questions around what is the best way to protect caribou.
Okay, I look forward to learning more about the results of this work that you guys are doing. Thanks for talking to us about it.
Mm-hmm.
Merci.
Thank you very much. Merci, merci.
Monday's eclipse is creating anticipation in the human world, but for animals, it'll come out of the blue. The CBC's Laura Meter looks at how they may react.
It's a normal day out here now, but on Monday at eclipse time, it will be much different out here. Christina Hare doesn't expect her dog to notice, but they won't be out here walking during it.
I'm not really concerned because she does sleep really well during the night, so I don't think it'll throw her off too much. She might have a nap, and I'll make sure to maybe not take her outside during that time.
Specialists in animal behavior say an eclipse can cause pets or farm animals to act differently, especially if they're already nervous.
this could set them off just a little bit. The big response that is reported is one of nonspecific fear or anxiety, simply because this is so uncertain.
Dr. Karen Overall says animals often act as they would at nighttime, but they might also think it's a storm, which could be stressful. For larger animals, having some kind of shelter or a barn can help. Trainers at this Charlottetown track plan to keep their horses in the barn, which is also a darker environment.
I'm not necessarily, I don't really know if it would harm them or not, but to be on the safe side, just keep them in the barn and just when it kind of passes in, then kind of go about your everyday thing pretty well.
Miles Heffernan says it makes sense to protect human and animal eyes, and vets agree.
There are people who will have goggles for their dog.
This veterinarian says it is harder to control larger animals, but pets should be kept inside if they're at risk of looking at the sun.
Some animals are far more sensitive to different types of light than we are. So, you'd want to be a little careful there.
In the past, researchers have reported birds gathering on the ground and looking at the eclipse, and some primate animals in zoos have pointed at it, and cows have thought it's milking time. Experts say it's good to plan ahead to keep animals safe. Laura Meter, CBC News, Charlottetown.
Many people visit Vancouver Island to walk through beautiful towns and enjoy provincial parks. And now they have another thing to see, a huge elephant seal named Emerson, who is currently molting. Take a look.
Normally what they do is they'll fence off and put some signs up so that the community knows not to go near them. You don't want to disturb them when they're molting.
It's scared.
What?
Scared. Scared?
Scared?
Yeah.
Why are you scared?
I don't like it. What's that guy doing?
He's resting. He's molting.
So I couldn't believe that this was actually happening, that this seal was here. He's well known to them, and he shows up here a few times. But they've tracked him from all the way from California, and he's apparently a resident around here now.
Yeah, out like that. Oh my goodness. He wasn't here when we...
Look at that, he's wagging his tail right now. He seems to like you guys.
Looks fabulous. I wouldn't mind blazing out like he is at the moment.
Certainly looks like a nice day for it. Like many Northerners, Wayne Guy spends his winter shoveling snow, but not where you might expect. Behind the Yellowknife Yacht Club, you can find his perfectly plowed racetrack. It's a replica of a French circuit about 2 kilometers long and, as we found out, a ton of fun, especially in a Porsche.
I've been doing this for about 6 years now, and it's a replica of a portion of a Couillet circuit, and it's for use by the whole community. So people run their dogs out here. I see parents bringing their kids out here to learn to drive. It's safe. There's no traffic to contend with. So it's a nice community amenity. So it's a 14-bend track. So we're coming up to the first bend here. And snowmobilers love doing little circuits on the track too. So that's a drift. See how slippery it is? It's icy, so in spring it's always icy. So it's good, if you do have studs, it's a good time of year for studs because you're basically driving on ice.
And for anybody who wants to come out here and try, what do you think is like the #1 tip that you could give a new driver?
Well, drive the course, get used to the, if you have traction control, take it off because actually it impedes, you don't get a feel for the car in the ice. So this, I take my traction control off. Yeah, and then when you're going into the corner, try to keep your nose right into the apex because then you see how it grabs? It just pulls the nose right around. and your chances of understeering are a lot less.
Have the cops ever given you any trouble for this track?
No, because it's not a public roadway, right? It's like a snowmobiler, or it's essentially a waterway. The remediation group was really very helpful in reaching out, and when they were doing the drill testing by the shore there, we rerouted the track so that it wouldn't interrupt their operations. So the whole community works together. The cross-country ski tracks sort of from year to year vary, so we try to accommodate them. I usually do a little ramp so they can ski across the road by the boat launch there. And you know, quite frankly, the fastest speed, as I said, you're going 45, 50 clicks. It's not as if, you know, it's a speed you'd find in town, actually. So, yeah.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you.
Priya doesn't love exercising, but loves the way it makes her feel. Max doesn't love cooking, but loves homemade meals with his kids. Paul doesn't love doing his taxes, but loves getting the benefits and credits he qualified for. Learn more about benefits and credits like the GST HST credit and Canada Workers Benefit at canada.ca/every dollar counts. A message from the Government of Canada.
So good.
Please be careful.
I'm excited, dude. Me too. We're back with Crime Scene Kitchen. It's a bold choice.
Yes, honey.
It's a very straightforward recipe. This is going to be an absolute showstopper.
That's what I'm talking about right there.
Woo!
Yeah. I murdered a donut.
That's a crime scene.
I'm such a fan of this show.
Listen to the podcast, Q with Tom Power.
The story itself is so unbelievable.
The industry wasn't set up for me to thrive in.
The presence I feel now is not something that I believed to be possible in the past.
So many people thought I couldn't do it. They doubted me.
I felt like I ripped my whole heart out.
I didn't realize how formative 25 to 30 would be.
I have to kind of repress my own self-doubt.
You're one of my favorite interviewers. I was pumped.
Get out of here.
Q with Tom Power. Available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hello.
Dad is the master of marketing.
So handsome, both of them. How big is my face? Bigger.
Dad's a superstar wherever he goes.
2, 1.
Go back to
Daddy marketing.
What does it take to reach the top? Meet some truly inspirational people as they share the challenges and secrets of their success. It changed everything on CBC News Explore.